a serial killer, who became known as the Servant Girl Annihilator, preyed upon the city of Austin, Texas. During the years 1884 and 1885, the killer's name originated with the writer O. Henry. The series of 8 axe murders was referred to by contemporary sources as the Servant Girl murders. Quote, the December 26, 1885, issue of the New York Times reported that the murders were committed by some cunning madman, who is insane on the subject of killing women. Quote, the murders represent an early example of a serial killer operating in the United States, 3 years before the Jack the Ripper murders in Whitechapel. In her book, Jack the Ripper, The American Connection, author Shirley Harrison asserted that the Texas killer and Jack the Ripper were one and the same man, namely James Maybrick. According to author Philip Sugden in The Complete History of Jack the Ripper, the conjecture that all the murders were committed by the same man originated in October 1888, when an editor with the Atlanta-Constitution proposed this conjecture, following the murders of Stride and Eddowes by Jack the Ripper. Murders. According to Texas Monthly, 7 women, 5 black, 2 white, and 1 black man were murdered. Additionally, 6 women and 2 men were seriously injured. All the victims were attacked indoors while asleep in their beds. 5 of the women were dragged, unconscious but still alive, and killed outdoors. 3 of the women were severely mutilated while outdoors. All the victims were posed in a similar manner. 6 of the murdered women had sharp object inserted into their ears. The series of murders ended with the killing of 2 white women, Eula Phillips, age 17, and Susan Hancock, who was attacked while sleeping in the bed of her 16-year-old daughter on the night of the 24th of December, 1885. Only one of those arrested, James Phillips, was convicted. He was found guilty of murdering his wife, but the conviction was later overturned. London authorities questioned several American cowboys, one of whom, according to the authors of Jack the Ripper, A to Z, was possibly Buck Taylor, a performer in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, about 70 miles west of Austin. According to a front-page article in the New York Times of December 26, 1885, 400 men were arrested during the course of the year. According to the Texas Monthly, powerful elected officials refused to believe that one man, or one group of men, was responsible for all the murders. The African American community and some practitioners of voodoo believed the killer was a white man, who had magic powers that enabled him to become invisible, as no dogs outside or in fenced yards adjacent to locations where murders occurred were heard to bark or raise any alarm. The series of murders stopped when additional police officers were hired, rewards were offered, and citizens formed a vigilance committee to patrol the streets at night. Victims. Molly Smith, 25, was murdered the night of the 30th of December 1884. Walter Spencer was seriously wounded. Clara Strand and Christine Martinson, 2 Swedish servant girls, were seriously wounded the night of the 19th of March 1885. Mary Ramey, 11, was murdered the night of the 30th of August 1885. Her mother, Rebecca Ramey, was seriously wounded. Orange Washington was murdered during the attack upon Gracie Vance. Lucinda Body and Patsy Gibson were seriously wounded. Eula Phillips was murdered the night of the 24th of December 1885. Her husband, James Phillips, was seriously wounded. Eyewitness Accounts. According to a July 2000 article in the Texas Monthly, there was an eyewitness who claimed to have seen the murderer but reported contradictory information to the police. The killer was variously reported to have been white or dark-complexioned, or a yellow man wearing lamp black to conceal his skin color, or a man wearing a Mother Hubbard-style dress, or a man wearing a slouch hat, or a man wearing a hat and a white rag that covered the lower part of his face. There were also reports that the killer worked with an accomplice, or belonged to a gang of murderers. The Malay cook suspect investigated the matter, calling on Mrs. Schmidt, who kept the Pearl House, near the foot of Congress Avenue opposite the Union Depot. 3 years ago, it was ascertained that a Malay cook calling himself Maurice had been employed at the house in 1885 and that he left sometime in January 1886. It will be remembered that the last of the series of Austin women murders was the killing of Mrs. Hancock and Mrs. Eula Phillips, the former occurring on Christmas Eve 1885, just before the Malay departed, and that the series then ended. A strong presumption that the Malay was the murderer of the Austin women was created by the fact that all of them except 2 or 3 resided in the immediate neighborhood of the Pearl House. Nathan Elgin. On July 15, 2014, the PBS TV show History Detectives aired an episode on the killings, using a combination of historical research and modern techniques, including psychological and geographic profiling. They identified a suspect, Nathan Elgin, a 19-year-old African-American cook. Elgin worked in close proximity to the crime scenes and had a club foot which was similar to a footprint believed to have been left by the killer. In February 1886, shortly after the last murder, Elgin was shot and killed by police while he was attempting to assault a girl with a knife. In popular culture, William Sidney Porter, better known as the short story writer O. Henry, was living in Austin at the time of the murders. Porter coined the term "Servant Girl Annihilators" in a May 10, 1885, letter addressed to his friend Dave Hall and later included in his anthology Rolling Stones. "Town is fearfully dull," wrote Porter, "except for the frequent raids of the Servant Girl Annihilators, who make things lively in the dull hours of the night." However, no contemporary newspaper or published source referred to the murderer as the Servant Girl Annihilator. Quote, in 2000, Stephen Saylor published the novel A Twist at the End, which closely reconstructed the murders and the ensuing trials, with young William Sidney Porter playing a fictional role. The novel was published in the United Kingdom as Honor the Dead, and has been translated into Portuguese and Hungarian. Episode 6 of the podcast Tanis, a mystery, suspense docudrama, is titled The Servant Girl Annihilator. Quote, it suggests a connection between the killings and the mysteries central to the podcast's ongoing story.